I'm often asked, what advice would you give to your, 21-year-old self, right? And the advice to my 21-year-old self would be, Bob Burg, shut up, stop talking, and listen. Because first, you don't know anything. Secondly, everything you think you know, it just isn't so. Okay, and because it wasn't. And I thought I did know. If 21 years old, 22 years old, 23, I really thought I knew. I thought I had it all figured out. It was just a matter of going through the motions to making it happen. Okay. Once I started understanding that I did not know anything, and that, again, much of the stuff I was absolutely positively sure I did know wasn't true. Okay. Now I was in a space, now I had the empty cup, right? Now I could start to really learn and grow. And I think I did that over the next 6, 7, 8 years. But then the next thing happened. And now I had been speaking now for a few years professionally. And fortunately, I'd gotten to meet some really, really wonderful people along the way.
Welcome to Connecting the Dots. This space is a place where we talk about seemingly random topics, but in all actuality, they're connected together. And this episode is sponsored by J. Carice & Company, a project management and data management consulting firm where we help you get ready for AI through processes and data migrations. And today we have the most ultimate special guest. His name is Bob Burg, if you haven't heard of him. The world works in really, really interesting ways because locally I got involved in the golf community, and I have a very special friend of mine named Rich Rogers who told me about Bob Burg. But then I had another special friend named Joe Graham, who was on this show as well, who also made an introduction for me for Bob Burg. So either way, me and Bob are supposed to meet either through the online world or through my friends in person. And so I'm so excited to have you here. And I can give some more background for those who may not be familiar with Bob's work. And so Bob, for more than 30 years, Bob has been successfully showing entrepreneurs, leaders, sales professionals how to build relationships, communicate their value, and accelerate their business growth. Although for years he was best known for his sales classic, Endless Referrals, his business parable, The Go-Giver, co-author with John David Mann, has created a worldwide movement. Rich Rogers really loves The Go-Giver. While a part of a 4-book series, The Go-Giver itself has sold over 1 million copies and has been translated into 30 languages. It is rated number 10 on Inc. magazine list of the most motivational books ever written, and was on HubSpot's 20 most highly rated sales books of all time.
Jess,
welcome.
Lovely to see you.
Oh my goodness. I was so excited to have you on my show. And it's incredible meeting someone that has touched so many lives, And the purpose of this show is to hear stories about people like you who have touched so many. What is your story? How did you even evolve into this version of Bob Burg who has touched me, Rich, Joe, everybody?
Well, some really cool people. Rich and Joe are just fantastic. It's just it's a joy to be able to call them friends. But yeah, I think it's like anything else, Jess. You kind of grow into things and you meet people along the way. I was very fortunate that I had great parents that set a fantastic example of how to be a decent, good person. So that's always a great way to start. Through studying sales, when I first got into sales, I started as a broadcaster, and then I kind of morphed. I like to say I graduated into sales, and from there really began studying personal development, because you realize when you're in sales that a big part of it is building yourself from the inside. Success ultimately manifests itself forwardly, but it begins in here in the head and in here in the heart. And so you begin learning a lot about yourself as well as a lot about others. And after a fortunately, successful sales career, I began to show others what had worked for me. And so I've just been very fortunate to have a career that I love, and feel as though I'm able to make a difference along the way. So, that's really it in a nutshell.
It's interesting. A conversation I had with Joe, we had this theory that really successful people have gone through traumatic things. And that fuels their drive to, keep going and all that stuff.
Yeah, I think it's difficult to get to a real high level of success without having, a overcome some difficulties. My big thing, I guess, well, it's not, I guess, it's what I've had to live with for 67 years is that I suffer from obsessive compulsive disorder, OCD. And that is, and it's not the OCD people say, oh, I'm so OCD about. No, I actually have the chemical imbalance in the brain that is the real thing. And few people really understand what it is. They see certain things on TV or whatever, and they think that's it. It goes very, very deep. But it kind of runs your life. It's sort of the bug in the computer software of your life. And so that's something I've had to work with. I've never overcome it, but I've been able to somehow manage it. And I often say, and people think, well, that obsessive compulsive, that will make you successful, even though it might be torturous along the way. No, it doesn't. You can have an obsessive compulsive personality, and that can have a lot to do with success. But obsessive compulsive disorder is something different. And one succeeds despite having OCD, not because of OCD.
Interesting.
But yeah, so, if we're talking about the things I've had to overcome, other than the regular things that everybody goes through and the many, many failures along the way, which, yeah, we all go through, right?
Yeah.
That would be, OCD would be my biggie.
You're the first person I've spoken to with OCD. So now my curiosity is piqued.
The OC Foundation in Boston does a lot of great work on that. And remember, until years ago, now, again, I'm 67. I didn't realize this is what I had until I was 26 years old.
Wow.
No, because back then they didn't have a name for it. In fact, I remember going to a couple of psychiatrists when I was younger, trying to figure out what this weird, horrible thing going on in my mind was. And one of them actually said to me, "You're nuts." Really good diagnosis from a psychiatrist. It's like, thank you very much. But I assumed he was right. And I thought I was the only one going through this internal hell. But then when I was 26, I went to McLean Hospital north of Boston and got diagnosed for what this was. And so yeah, there's information. I just actually put in the chat. I put a link to the IOCDF.org, which is amazing that I was able to actually multitask while I was doing this, which I do not do well, and put that in the chat. But so yeah, there's a lot of information there.
Very, very fascinating. So when you got that official diagnosis, was it like a sense of relief? Like what was that pivot like?
There was some relief in that it wasn't just me. Not that I'd wish it upon anybody else, but there was also like knowing there was actually something that this was. It wasn't just like my weird, out of control mind that was, torturing me. It was that there was something there, and then once that's the thing and you realize what it is, the battle is still there. But there is a sense of relief in knowing you're not the only one, on earth that this is happening to.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Very fascinating. Very fascinating. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you for sharing. And so so you grew up in Boston. You were born in Boston?
Yeah, just west of Boston.
Just west of Boston. And was it just you alone, or you have siblings?
No, older brother and a younger sister.
Oh, so you're the middle child.
Yeah, the middle child.
And Luna made a appearance for you
cat.
as well.
Yep. Hi. I saw that beautiful cat in a LinkedIn post of yours. Yeah, mine won't actually come up on my lap. He's often in the chair next to me while we're doing this. So when you see my arm like this, it's because I'm patting little buddy. But no, he won't come up on my lap.
Yeah, we have two cats. The boy cat, no, he doesn't. Like, he won't jump on my lap like that. He'll like sit by my feet, or he'll be by me. But this one, she's a girl. Yeah. Yeah. And so she's like all the cuddles.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So you're the middle child. I'm the middle child too. So what was like the dynamics growing up between you and your siblings?
I did not really get along with it. They got along with each other. I didn't really get along with them at all. And so, it kind of probably typical of a lot of families in that regard.
Yeah, the middle child syndrome. And what were some of your yeah. And so what were some of your interests like as a kid? Like what did you like to do?
Oh, I was a baseball fanatic when I was a kid, and we used to, and I actually, my house was adjacent to the schoolyard. the elementary school yard, which had a couple baseball fields. So I was always over there, and then we could be there from after school till it was till it was so dark you couldn't see, and we're still pitching and trying to hit, while it's dark because nobody wanted to leave. But so that was great. Those are great memories.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so we have baseball.
Yeah, that was about it when I was a kid. I certainly was not a student. I barely graduated high school. In fact, it's interesting on my I was never there. I had just no respect for the idea of school and education. My education didn't start till I got into sales and started reading everything I could get my hands on. But yeah, on my last day during high school graduation, I remember my guidance counselor, this was after the graduation ceremony. I was walking, he saw me and he said, "Burg," he said, "I can't believe I'm actually seeing you here." Because that I graduated, and he was a nice guy. That was not I mean, it was a put down, but it was not out of line. I mean, he was correct. I was surprised that I saw me there.
That is so fascinating.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was just baseball. Like that's the only thing you cared about in just growing up, just baseball.
That was my sense of joy. I derived my joy from baseball and watching the Red Sox and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I mean, I played different sports, but baseball was my passion. I always said I wanted to, when I grew up, be the third baseman for the Boston Red Sox. I just had no talent, unfortunately, to be able to get to that place. But,
That's okay.
Dream.
Yeah, that's so interesting. All right. So then, so you didn't believe in the school system at the time. You loved baseball and you barely almost graduated. So like, when were you like, okay, I need to make money? When did that happen?
Yeah. Well, I mean, aside from the jobs that you have when you're a kid.
Yeah.
I mean, once I got into the actual world of, again, I started as a broadcaster. So I actually did go to college. And by the way, I got into college on academic probation. And I'm pretty sure I graduated on academic probation. So again, and this is not something I'm bragging about. I regret that I did that. I mean, I think of how that set me back. It really did.
Did it?
Yeah, it's not that they teach you necessarily all these great truths in high school or college. It's that if you're doing it right, you should be developing the discipline to be able to learn. And I just didn't. I had no respect for the idea of school. I just wanted to get out into the world and get going.
Mm-hmm.
But I did graduate college, and I got a job, and I was a radio sportscaster first, and then I moved into television news. And so after a couple of years of that, I then again went into sales, and that's when things started to kind of click for me.
Okay. How old were you when you went into sales?
I must have been about 25, 26 maybe.
Uh-huh. And so like during this time, was there any type of self-reflection or like plans about the future, or were you just kind of going day to day?
Oh, no, I knew I wanted my future to be something special. I didn't exactly know what it was going to be, but sales was where I was, and I was just a learning machine at that point.
Mm-hmm.
Once I started realizing and recognizing. So when I first got into sales, the first few months I floundered because I had no real formal training in it, but I started reading books like by people like Zig Ziglar and Tom Hopkins and Brian Tracy, and started to really, and then go to, anytime I'd go to seminars, I would listen to, back then it was cassette tape albums. And I mean, I just immersed myself in it. I was obsessed with it, and just, wow, I was growing and I was learning, and things were starting to happen. And there were still lots of failures, but there also now were some successes. And that's really kind of how it happened. I mean, so there was no one particular thing that said, okay, Burg, wake up and get going. It was just discovering certain things along the way.
And what type of support system did you have like during that journey? Like when you're trying to figure things out and really, become the best version that you can at that particular moment? So
I'd say there were two stages of this. So the first is, again, in my mid-20s or whatever, where I started sales. And I would kind of come across people that became, I guess you could say, unofficial mentors, people I could go to for advice. And they knew I was a good student at that point. I became a good student once I realized how important it was to learn, because there were so many things I didn't know. Now, I'm often asked, what advice would you give to your, 21-year-old self, right? And the advice to my 21-year-old self would be, Bob Burg, shut up, stop talking, and listen. Because first, you don't know anything. Secondly, everything you think you know, it just isn't so. Okay. And, because it wasn't. And I thought I did know. If 21 years old, 22 years old, 23, I really thought I knew. I thought I had it all figured out. It was just a matter of going through the motions to making it happen. Okay. Once I started understanding that I did not know anything, and that, again, much of the stuff I was absolutely positively sure I did know wasn't true. Okay. Now I was in a space. Now I had the empty cup, right? Now I could start to really learn and grow. And I think I did that over the next 6, 7, 8 years. But then the next thing happened. And now I had been speaking now for a few years professionally. And fortunately, I'd gotten to meet some really, really wonderful people along the way. One of them was a guy named Charlie Tremendous Jones. Now, Charlie was one of the old-time speakers, who just fantastic, wonderful human being. His daughter, Dr. Tracy Jones, she's now taken over his business since he passed about 10 years ago. But he was just a wonderful guy. And we'd often talk on the phone, and just a wonderful person. And he was a book maniac. He just absolutely loved books, was always sharing books. So he had shared a book with me by a guy named Frank Betcher. Now, Frank's big book was called How I Raised Myself from Failure to Success Through Selling. Okay, it was one of those classics that you'd read if you were in sales and so forth. In the last chapter, I think it was, of Mr. Betcher's book, he had an excerpt from Benjamin Franklin's book, The Autobiography, which would turn out to be a game changer for me. Now, setting the stage. At this point, I was probably 34, 35 years old, had now gotten some financial success, and I was doing well by most people's standards. But I also knew there was a whole lot. And even, again, putting the OCD aside, even though I can't really put it aside because it was part of everything, but nonetheless, there were a lot of character traits I had that were holding me back from really taking it to the next level. And I wasn't even aware that it was doing so until I read that chapter in Frank Betcher's book about how Benjamin Franklin, when he was just a young kid, he came to realize that there were a number of character traits he had that were negative. And that if he was going to fulfill his potential, he was going to have to turn those negative traits into positive traits. Now, there were no books about that at the time. And so Ben Franklin, being an inventor, invented his own, right? And so Ben Franklin included this chapter in his book, The Autobiography. So this autobiography, which he basically wrote for his son, it wasn't necessarily to be published, but thank goodness it was, is filled with the wisdom of a Ben Franklin. But in one of his books, he has a chapter called 13 Virtues, okay? And what it was about was that he realized that he needed to turn these weaknesses into strength, these character flaws into character strength. So what he did is he would take one character trait, one specific trait, and he would work on that for an entire week, absolutely focusing on that to the exclusion of everything else. Then he would do another one for a week, then another one. Now he had 13 of these traits that he wanted to change. 13 times 4 are 52, which makes up a year. So what he did, right, is he went through the course 4 times. Going back after the 13th week, he'd now go to that first trait again, focus just on that and nothing else. Then the second week, just that. Now he'd go through another, go back again, right? So by the end of the year, he's gone through this thing 4 times, and it was transformational for him. Now, again, that was his system. Ben Franklin was a pretty successful guy, and I thought, I think I will listen to him. Now, and you think of what is a system, right? A system is simply the process of predictably achieving a goal based on a logical and specific set of how-to principles. The key being predictability. If it's been proven that by doing A, you'll get the desired results of B, then you know all you need to do is A and continue to do A, and you'll get the desired results of B. So I did what he did. I used some of his same traits, which are also ones I needed to work on, and then some were my own. And so what I did is I put them on note cards. I made a little booklet, put them on note cards. So my first one was appreciation and the gratitude. And the reason why was because I did not have a sense of gratitude.
Interesting.
Yeah. I look at things really half empty or fully empty, if you will. Fully empty. That's kind of an oxymoron, I guess, but empty. And I saw the bad side of everything. Now, again, I really do think a lot of that has to do with the OCD permeating everything that, it just took my world to that place. Nonetheless, I could still control some of that to the point that I could. And one was my attitude about that. And I needed to live in gratitude as opposed to ingratitude, ingratitude, right? So I wrote a note to myself, and I'd put this where I could see it everywhere. It was on my computer, on my bathroom mirror. It was, anywhere I'd go in the house that I would see. It was on my phone. Back when we had actual phones, I put it on my phone, right? And so the first one was appreciation, or you could say gratitude. Notice the blessing in everything, big and small. Dwell on the beauty in all I see, hear, touch, taste, smell. Realize that everything is a gift from the Almighty and is put there by God in order to enjoy and learn from. Then I would also do studies. I'd be studying everything I could that week on gratitude. Would look at writings, and I'd take these writings and I'd copy them, and I would, put them on a note card so I could read them every morning. What are your first thoughts when you wake up in the morning? Regardless of the past, from here on, choose thoughts of gratitude. The more joy you experience in your life, the more gratitude you'll have, the easier it'll be for you. When you first wake up in the morning, express your profound gratitude for the gift of life, getting off to it right. I just started, and I'd keep all these notes about it. And so for that first week, that 1 week, everything was about gratitude to the exclusion of everything else. Now, my next one was positive speech. Judge the value of my words before I speak. Speak only what may benefit others and myself. Avoid lashon hara. Lashon hara is a Hebrew term. It means evil speech or gossip. I was a gossip. I was a horrible guy. I spoke bad about anything I could. I listened to gossip. I participated. Encouraged it. And it was a horrible part of my personality. And again, I'm someone who, I was a nice guy, okay? But the way I spoke about people, the gossip I participated in, hurt a lot of people, including me, ultimately, because it hurt my reputation and hurt my effectiveness. But nonetheless, that was deserved. Speaking badly about others wasn't deserved. And so I decided to just eliminate gossip from my life. And so that was what I worked on. So I'd go through that. So again, then there were 10 others. I'd repeat it, right? 13 weeks, 13 times 4, 52, go through the course 4 times in a year, boom. And it just changed me. It was Bob 2.0. We wouldn't have had that term back then, but that's what it was. And that was really what took me to that next level of success in my life, that happiness, that joy, peace of mind. And that was a game changer for me.
Oh, that was incredible. Thank you so much for sharing that, because because I listened to your book and it's just like, yes, yes, yes. All the laws that you have in there, laws of reciprocity, laws of giving, everything. And so that's why I really wanted to know your story, because you have such transformation, right?
Thank you.
You have such transformation. Seriously, you had to overcome OCD and you had to overcome all the negative thinking. Right? You have 2 things, not just the negative thinking that everybody else has, but you have the OCD on top of it. So that's that's hard.
Yeah.
That's hard. So that's why I was so curious about your story. What did you have to grow through to get to where you are today? And this is what people need to hear, because they just see successful people and they're like, oh, he's always had that, they don't really know you need to work on yourself through and through and through and through and through.
Absolutely. And, Benjamin Franklin talked about it being the best investment you could ever make is the investment in yourself. Pour your dollars into yourself, into your own mind and heart, and work on yourself. Yeah, absolutely. And it's ongoing. It never stops.
Yeah, exactly. And I know we're at time. I feel like I could talk to you for hours.
Likewise.
So like if you could give your top 3 pieces of life advice, just in general, what would it be?
Let's see. So the first one I would say is to continually work on yourself. Okay, that would be the for get Benjamin Franklin's book, go through that same system. Absolutely. The second thing I would say is really make a study of human nature. Human nature, that is so important. It's the general psychological characteristics, feelings, and behavioral traits of humankind as considered shared by all humans. Now, don't get me wrong, we're all individuals. We all have our own needs, wants, desires, ways of pursuing happiness, blah, blah, everything, of course, absolutely. Yet there are absolute patterns of human nature.
Yes.
And since we're always dealing with humans, right, that is so important to understand how and why people are the way they are.
Cycles.
Now, the third thing would kind of play into that, and that is learn people skills. Okay. Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People was the first book that really demonstrated how important that is, because we are dealing with people who all have feelings, and they all have desires and egos and likes and dislikes, and everyone comes from their own set of beliefs, their own belief systems that really drive their entire essence, right? And we've got to be able to work with people in an effective way that builds everyone in the process and genuinely helps other people feel good about themselves. And when they feel good about themselves, they feel good about you. And that's when you're able to create these wonderful, wonderful relationships that just build everyone in the process.
I love that so much. And what's the best way for people to find you?
Best way is just Burg.
Wonderful. Oh my goodness. Thank you so much, Bob. It's been such a pleasure. Oh my gosh.